afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's always weird when you hear your voice being repeated somewhere. Um, Welcome, everybody, to this budget, I would call a meeting, special meeting. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about the county's 2019-2020 budget. And I was looking for my agenda for this, but I guess we don't have one that way. We do, don't we? In the book?
One of these.
I'll go get you one.
Here you go, Tommy. Get going.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I got one. I got one, yeah.
I had some exercise, so thank you.
Yeah, probably mixed up with the other one. We're gonna follow the, I guess, instructions. This is a special meeting or a meeting of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We're also sitting as all special taxing districts that are directed by the Board of Supervisors, and this is May the 4th. You gave me the May the 5th agenda.
Yeah.
Insisting, yeah.
That's the
This
one
is the
I
May the
had.
4th agenda. And this is 1 p.m. I just did the call to order. We'll have a Pledge of Allegiance again. So Supervisor McLeod, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance without wrapping yourself on?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, all right. This is going to feel a little weird because of all the things that have happened over the last 2 months. Having a budget, work session or a budget session, knowing that in reality, we'll probably be struggling to get real numbers until, we're into the new year. But we have to do this. I just remind everybody that this is a budget, right? It's not necessarily, it's like a plan. But it's not necessarily how we're going to do it. We're going to have to be careful this year that we take a look at all these different budget line items and adjust them according to the circumstances as they happen. So we just want to let everybody know that the simple fact we're listening to the presentations and making some, I guess, adjustments and or accepting some numbers doesn't mean much at a time like this. But it's something that we have to go through, and so hopefully you will be patient with us if we ask some questions that may not make sense, but that's Supervisor McLeod most of the time, but we have to bear with it.
Expect anything less.
Anyway, the first item in the agenda is call to the public, and call to the public is held for the public benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona revised statutes, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and decisions at a future date. Now, anyone who's concerned about COVID-19 and does not want to be put in an open setting can submit an email, call to the public statement at publiccomment@yumacountyaz.gov. This email's form of public comment will be accepted until 8 a.m. the day of the meeting. We normally would say that if meeting begins at 1, we'd probably take them up until, 1 o'clock. Our public comments will be read aloud during the Yuma County Board of Supervisors meeting whenever it begins. And the first thing we'll have this afternoon is a briefing by the budget review team.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. Susan Thorpe, County Administrator. The members of the budget review team are Gil Villegas, the Chief Financial Officer, Tony Struck, the Budget Director, Lucia Gomez, the Budget Manager, Tiffany Anderson, Management Analyst, and Jenny Untersey, Budget Analyst. So they're here today to provide any supplemental information that you may have. We did present the overview of the budget this morning, and so we will, after all the presentations are made, we'll provide an opportunity for the board to give us any directions on changes that you'd like to see from the recommended budget to the tentative budget. So with that said, I would like to go ahead and invite the first individual up for presentation, and that is the Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation.
When somebody comes in, they need to shut that door because what happens is that, it doesn't?
It's automated.
Oh, it's automatic.
Yeah, it's hydraulic
Yes.
too.
He has to pull that shit.
All right, okay, well, we'll deal with it. Right,
Good
Julie?
afternoon, Chairman, members of the council and administration.
Back up a little
Okay,
bit.
not council, I
Do I look
apologize.
like Mayor Douglas?
Members,
good
our
looking.
supervisors, which we're very grateful
I was
for.
expecting that.
I really appreciate your opening remarks because this is unprecedented and we are looking at things on a now time basis. We did release our quarterly report, so we have seen that there's not been an impact up to March. March, our revenues collected were still on par. So we know April is going to show a dramatic decrease. We also know that the number of flights with WTI closing without having our fare, there are so many things that have impacted our hospitality sector, but they've also impacted our transportation sector because the number of rental cars, the number of flights and things like that have all been grossly impacted. With the do not travel by the government, YPG has had a significant decrease, which then means our hotels have seen a significant decrease as well. We are talking to these major employers on a biweekly basis. We have been in communication with TRAX, we've been in communication with both commanders, we've been in communication with our senators at the federal level to ensure that this stimulus does address what's happening in our government section of our industry sector. So hopefully we'll see some good news there. But as far as our budget request goes, we submitted a letter in January requesting level funding with last year, and that would remain our request, but we understand completely if that is not the case. We understand that we are going to see some dramatic impacts to the revenues. So I am here to answer any questions if you have them, and I appreciate your consideration. We're very grateful for the funding that you do give us, and we do hope to remain level if possible.
All right, normally, before we even have someone up here, someone from the budget review team would be telling us this budget is on page so-and-so, and, you know, we'd be ready to look at it. Did we miss that?
The department pages begin on page 162 under non-departmental.
Okay, so page 162. And you're fine with the budget review team's recommendation? You know what it
I
is?
haven't seen their recommendation. The only thing I'm aware of is what we proposed, which was to remain level.
There,
Yeah, go ahead.
There was an increase from current year 150,000 to 150,208.
That was just rounding up for population. We're fine with the 150. We're not going to split hairs over 280.
That's fine, so you're happy with that?
I am very happy with that, yes.
Any comments from the board? I think, as I've stated before, I think I did sort of like a disclaimer at the beginning of the meeting, just telling you and telling everybody that these are all, can all be adjusted and most likely won't be adjusted upwards.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yes.
thank you very much. I think everybody's okay with that. And if you're okay with that, we're okay with that. Thank you very much, Julie, and great work you guys doing out there. Even though it's trying times, you're still keeping up with everything that's going on.
Yes.
And we take the opportunity as a board of supervisors to let everybody know that we're as concerned as they are about opening up their businesses and going back to some sort of a regular commercial life. We're looking forward to directions from the state, and as much as we can, we'll do as much as we can to get, you know, the economy going as soon as possible, as soon as.
We sincerely appreciate the leadership that our local governments have demonstrated through this. It's been very prudent, and it has, as we've been able to witness, our cases have been manageable, and the number of deaths is really commendable, and I attribute that to the leadership in this community.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's not get into that because it's going to change very soon. We're doing a lot more testing, and that is going to bring in different numbers for sure, because we all, I think, understand that a lot of people might have gone through and been infected and not realized that. And I think we're going to find out pretty soon because of all the testing we did this weekend, just how many people in the general population actually has it, or we just won't find out who had it, but we're going to find out who has it.
The numbers of recovered are very good too, so I hope we can start sharing that with the public. That's a very positive, upbeat message, is that, you know, even though we've had this many cases, we do have these many that have recovered, and we know our Marines that were the first to initial are both back to work full time. So that's very positive news for the community to hear, and I hope we can start sharing that as well.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say, I don't want numbers going up as long as that death number stays where it's at. That's the one that,
Concerns us.
yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie.
Next
Sure.
next
ahead.
next we have Crossroads Mission, Cesar Acosta, Treatment Director is available for any questions. Department pages begin on 162. The recommendation was to keep at level $20,000.
Ah,
It's right above the QIEDC. It's a smaller letters.
yeah, here, look, it's 160, it's page 162. 162, up on top, second one, I
There we
think.
go. Thank you.
Gotcha. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone, Board of Supervisors and the rest of the team. First of all, we just want to say thank you for the money that you were able to bless the Crossville Mission last year. As you can see, this year's a little bit different of what the circumstances, what's going on. We've had to make a little bit of adjustments of buying supplies like hand sanitizers or bleach, disinfectant. But overall, we're maintaining right now. We do have our team, some of our, like Myra Garlett, the rest of the directors are at home working. The only difference this year is that I don't know if most of you have heard, our family shelter before this happened got flooded with sewage. And hopefully by the end of May, we'll be back and running. But we do appreciate everything that you guys have done.
And we will let you know that when we look at that, some of the funds that the Cocoba tribe made available to us were directed towards to the mission, because we felt that we needed to support that. And the money we set aside for that, it's only a part of what efforts we will undertake to assist as much as possible during these trying times. So we'll keep an eye on your operation.
I really appreciate it, and I think we just received that check today too. So we appreciate everything that you guys doing. And I do want to say that I just want to thank the Yuma community, because it seems like even though we're going through this crisis and everything, the Yuma community continues to donate to the Crossville Mission regardless. We've had school supplies, we've had blankets and pillows coming nonstop, so I do appreciate the Yuma County.
Good. Well, glad to be able to give you a forum to say that.
Thank you. That's all
Well,
I
thank
have.
you. You're okay with it.
I'm okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have cooperative extension.
Russ Engel, Cooperative Extension Director is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 162.
Morning.
And we
or
do have your
afternoon.
booklet.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm Russ Engel. I'm the Director of Yuma County Cooperative Extension for the University of Arizona. Hope everybody is staying healthy and being positive during this time. I think it's important. We all try to keep a positive attitude. We're going to get through this thing. Cooperative Extension, I provided you all with an annual report we put together. So when you have time, please look through that. It lists each program and accomplishments. I'd like to highlight just a couple of things. I think we had a great year, 2019, productive, exciting year. We essentially added 4 positions in 2019. We added a plant pathologist position. We added an ag agent position. Barry Tickus, who used to be here, transferred back from La Paz County, so he's now here full-time as our weed management specialist. And we had an agent come to Yuma County, transfer to Yuma County, and family support. So essentially, we added 4 programs, and it significantly increased our capacity to serve the citizens of Yuma County. With that and with the funding, greatly appreciate the funding and the support the county gives us. We couldn't do what we do without you guys' partnership and support. So a couple other things we're real proud of is we have an army of volunteers. Between 4-H and horticulture, the amount of hours that our volunteers logged in 2019 equated to almost $1 million worth of service that we got. Also, our programs, the program leads brought in approximately $500,000 in 2019 to support their programs. So I'm proud of the support we get from the community, from the county, everybody. It's phenomenal. So we hope we can carry this forward and move on in 2020. Like I said, we're happy with what we've seen proposed for our budget. I think it's slight increase from last year, but absolutely happy to get that. We, thoroughly appreciate the support we get from Yuma County. We couldn't serve at the capacity we do without your support.
Well, I think everything was fine. We do have a complaint with the research specialist that you have over there. Sometimes he gets a little obnoxious, but, we want to thank you for sending him over and letting him, serve.
We'll try to tone it down.
Well, you and I will have that conversation later.
Okay.
Okay, you okay with the budget? You're
We
fine.
are.
All right, fine. Any questions from everybody other than the research specialist? Thank you very much.
That's why I didn't want to give you a picture.
Picture tells 1,000. Number 5, excuse me.
Next, we have the Board of Supervisors, Susan Thorpe, County Administrators, available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 83, staffing page 83.
83.
Thank you. I didn't hear.
That's, if you listen to the outside, you'll get it.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, it's probably louder than. So no significant changes this year? We're just keeping sort of like a sustainable. Right. Any questions? It's pretty much the same as it was last year, again, with the caveat that it could change, but at this particular time, it remains the same. Okay. If you're
Next.
happy with that, and the Board of Supervisors is happy with that, we'll move on to the other one. Don't pay attention to me. He's leaving anyway, so what does he care, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Next, we have the County Administrator's Office to include emergency management, risk management, conflict administration, communications, and grants. County Administrator Susan Thorpe is available for questions. Department pages begin on page 93, staffing pages 94 through 95.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Get tested, will you?
Where's your mask?
I'm sorry about for the research analyst in front of you. I would duck if I were you.
Sorry, Martin.
I would duck or at least clean my back of my head. Okay, County Administrator, you're up. Nothing?
Answer any questions that you might have?
Do you have any questions from the County Administrator? No? If not, then we'll move on to the next one.
Next, we have the non-departmental department. Tony Struck, Budget Director, is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 161, staffing page 161.
Oh, the budget is less than last year. That's good.
Why such a large drop in legal?
They're not asking any questions anymore.
Madam Chairman, yes, Supervisor McLeod, Tony Struck, the Budget Director. So this year, we went back and analyzed a number of accounts and the utilization against them. We set aside dollars to be used and, say, legal expenses for public defender, legal defenders, those type of things. And if we had the amounts we had set aside, if they haven't been utilizing that, we felt like we could reduce those a little bit. We also had the statewide impacts in there, and we actually reduced that for the Department of Juvenile Corrections that we got permanent relief of last year. So we saw a decrease in those. We analyzed all those expenses and felt comfortable with what's left in there so we can assist other departments.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
All right, so no questions on non-departmental. We'll move on to human resources.
Next, we have Felicia Frostro, Human Resources Director, is available for any questions. Department pages begin page 135, staffing page 136 through 137.
So you're just gonna wait until we have a question or not?
Thank you.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Those reserve and contingencies, those are the health,
YCBT, yes, our health plan.
that went up by 10%?
It went up with regards to our plan costs because of what we identified with our plan savings with the adjustments. And it also was an increase on the general fund because of that shift that we went from the dependents. So with our benchmarking that we've been doing with our medical plans and the participation that we have in the wellness program, it's actually a true benefit for our plan, very healthy. And so we've received an increase.
Very healthy.
Yes.
All right. Any questions for human resources? You're okay with you're okay with your budget, right?
Yes, thankful to the BRT, very pleased with my budget and able to move forward with.
Supervisor
Total
Franklin?
injury claims, 18, 19, look at the difference. There's a big jump in 19 and 20. Is that,
So our injury claims, so from a human resource perspective, as us working with risk management, we help with the education and the training of the program itself. And the jump that we saw are due to slip, trips, and falls. So we've identified that working with the current office to help to mitigate those for future situations. And so they're doing something now to be able to make that adjustment. But we have had maybe an increase, but actually a decrease in the amount of the total claims, that the expenditures that we've had to expend.
so that went down?
Yes, extremely.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions? You're happy, we're happy. Thank you.
Next, we have information.
And Technology Services, Cliff Summers, Chief Information Officers, available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 139, staffing 140 through 141.
I can't hear anything. The IT system is not working. No, I'm just kidding. Threw you off a little, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, so how are you with your budget? Are you okay with it?
Yeah, we're fine with the budget.
Fine with the budget?
I appreciate what the BRT has done and all the work that's went into it between Eddie and I working on it along with, what we presented back to the BRT. So definitely we're happy with
Just changed my password today.
it. We're working on something for you also with that as well. That's later to be determined.
How later?
Okay, yeah.
In the future, soon.
How near?
From IT, it could be, from IT, that's a very cryptic response right there. You're okay with your budget? Any questions? I mean, we're changing a server, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're making quite a few changes. And then on top of that, as Supervisor Porches had alluded to, we're going to make some changes as far as some of the password.
How soon we forget, right? All this stuff comes from experiences that we've had in the past regarding security. And, I think you might take the opportunity to remind everyone that the weakest link in any security system, it's that individual who doesn't change his password when he should. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We move on.
Well, he's ragging on you today.
Hey, clicking on links that should be clicking.
When you have
Doing research that shouldn't be doing.
when you have a strong security password, you shouldn't be changing it every 30 days.
Says, well, anyway. All right, so everybody's happy with the IT? Right, okay, then, thank you very much. Now, we gotta have Eddie talk now. He showed up in this, uniform, black and red, which is, you're on strike, right? All right. See you, Eddie. The Health District, Cesar, was he here?
Next, we have Health District, Diana Gomez,
Diana.
Public Health Services Chief
I
Health
thought you-
Officers, available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 121, staffing 123 to 124.
23 to 120.
Hello, members of the board.
Hold on a minute until the echo dies from outside. Now, You okay with your budget?
I'm okay with my budget.
You're fine with
It
your
took me
budget?
a while. I took the mask and then it took a while to process. Yes, I'm okay
We
with the
would
budget.
like to request one for Supervisor Simmons. Is there a possibility?
We're okay, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you think that's 6 feet apart?
I'm trying to. No, really, this is a good chance I mean, an opportunity at least to talk about what a wonderful job you're doing at the health department and whether we're as prepared as we could be. Is it your feeling that we're staffed enough, that we've got enough resources and tools to handle this? Because of all the departments here that probably has a different task at hand, is your department. I mean, I know that you've done a great job in the past of making sure that you get grants and subsidies to sustain a lot of what you do, and we're very grateful for that because every time there's a budget, we don't see the health department, we see the health department growing and we see the health department handling more things, but we don't see that reflected necessarily on the general budget. So are you?
Right. Well, we've, like you said, we've been really diligent about planning ahead and making sure that we have, even for emergencies like this, which has put us in a good position. Having said that, I am learning a lot about, we prepare for this type of situation, but never did we imagine the scope and the length that this would, endure. So we're good with what we have, but I definitely have some ideas about, obviously, if this is going to be one of those things, if we are in this situation again, things like contact tracing, follow-up investigation were things that we're doing our normal job. We're doing the regular contact investigation, the regular communicable disease tracing and tracking, and now we have this on top of that. So that has been a challenge. So we're trying to figure out how to be better prepared next time around. So.
See, I don't want to put you in the spot too much, but earlier this afternoon, we had the YEDC director, Julie Angel, and she mentioned something about people who have passed through, and are basically in the other side and recuperating, and that we don't provide those numbers. Is there a particular reason why?
Yes, so there's been a lot of questions about recovery and what recovery looks like. And the truth of the matter is that recovery looks different to different people. If we're looking at the infectious period for this particular disease, we typically say 14 days. Now, 14 days, you may or may not, depending on symptom onset, you may still be contagious or not. Typically we say you're okay after 14 days. So do you classify that as a recovery? Or recovery is where you hospitalized and now you've been released from the hospital. That's not necessarily recovered, especially if you had a comorbidity. For some people, they got sick. Some people experience a second wave within those 14 days where their symptoms improve, and then unfortunately, they get a second onset of stronger symptoms. Mm-hmm. And so if you're asthmatic or you have a cardiac condition, recovery could take weeks. It could take longer than that depending. So that's really hard to gauge. The focus of my agency right now has been on procuring PPE for first responders, for healthcare providers, for all those people on the front line. It's been on early identification. It's been on partnering with agencies to make sure we have the testing, and thanks a lot to the advocacy that you've done on our part to make sure we have the testing kits, to make sure we push those out to the agencies. And we've had, for example, Regional Center of Border Health, Yuma Regional Medical Center, and Sunset Community Health Clinic stand up and do those testing blitz. So the majority of our work has been focused on A, being able to test the people that need to be testing, B, procuring the supplies so that those people can be tested, and 3, doing the PPE. Now for staffing, contract tracing and investigation is incredibly time consuming, keeping in mind that we have a regular workload. The communicable diseases have not gone away because this one came along and took up so much of our time. So we're doing that. And so for any contact tracing, especially there's been a lot of questions about sites of employment. So when something like that happens, we contact you, we do an investigation, we try to figure who you've come in contact with, and then it extends from there. If there's an employer, we have to assess which of your coworkers were in contact. We have to reach out to them, see where they were. And then if there's a risk to the public, then we have to reach out to the public and make sure they know. So it's incredibly, incredibly time-consuming work and important work. but it helps us ensure that those people that might be at risk, especially those asymptomatic people that are able to transmit the disease without showing any symptoms, are identified and isolated, which is critical in helping us keep our volume low. The other issue that we in Yuma County are trying to address as effectively as we can is binational cases and multi-jurisdictional cases. We border Imperial County, so we've had a lot of cross-jurisdictional cases, and we share a border with Mexico. So we've had a lot of binational surveillance. So again, those are things that, normally when you have a couple of cases are time consuming, but in this particular instance, the majority of the work is done on that piece. So gauging a recovery is difficult. It's not that we don't want to provide it. It's not, but it doesn't change the guidance. It really doesn't change the guidance of the protective measures. I would love to just say we have this many people, but when you're tracking somebody who was released after being in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then they're still recovering, they're not where they need to be, calling them at home or trying to track them down, are you recovered? It has a mental toll for them as well. So we're trying to be sensitive to that as well. It's a very mentally exhausting ordeal and physically exhausting for those people that have had complications and have required hospitalization. So
That's not and that's even not counting the fact that we're finding out that some people have lasting after effects.
Right, and so that's hard to gauge. And if you're a contact and you become ill, it's basically considered an illness. You may not be tested because you're already ill and you're a contact to somebody, so you were never tested. So maybe your whole household is ill, but you're isolating, you're doing the right thing. That would mean tracking all those people. We know where they're at, we know they're healthy, but then calling 5, 6, 10 people within a house, it's a balance, And so we're focusing on the identification, the isolation of cases, which is what prevents the spread. I'd love to tell success stories. I would love to tell you who and how and where they are in their recovery phase, but that's really difficult to gauge. So that's why. It's not because there's some covert attempt to not release that information. That's awesome information to share when you can share it. But we also must be factual. And because it's difficult to gauge, and I can't say it definitively, we are not releasing. But that's not preventing people from self-disclosing that information. So that's the piece. And I know it was probably way more information than you wanted to hear. But
It's a question we get. We got it last weekend from the newspaper.
And I'd love to share that. I'd love to tell you we have X amount. But the fact of the matter is that there's lingering. Recovery differs per individual, and it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be days.
Okay, so how's your budget, okay?
My budget is okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to compliment you and your team on the way you've handled this, because this is all new territory as far as anybody dealing with it. You guys have done an outstanding job. Keep up the good work.
We're learning as we go, and we hope that, again, this is the baseline. So, working with our partners, we're able to, now we know.
Mr. Chair, Diana, we're so lucky to have you at the helm. Your experience and your knowledge and the way you work with your staff has really, really helped make this go as smoothly as can be in uncharted waters, which is what we're in. And yes,
awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support. And does that mean I can ask for all sorts of stuff now? For budget?
It means nothing.
No, thank you very much.
You were
We're
not
good.
here.
We're learning.
You were not here at the beginning of the meeting where I told everybody, look, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we'll be able to spend it. So just kind of giving you that, that warning.
Okay. This year, as you prepare and you prepare and you prepare. So we're going to learn a lot this year. And so it'll aid our response in the future if we see something like this ever again.
Mr. Chair and Diana, we do know that you're overcrowded at the county health department as well, and that you're having 2 and 3 people in a space that's supposed to be meant for 1. So we are aware of that, and unfortunately, right now is not a good time to
Talk about expansion.
Yeah,
No,
to
I
be
understand.
able to do anything, but we understand and we are on that.
And we're all making sacrifices, and we're all doing the best we can, and we'll come out the other side better and better prepared and more knowledgeable.
Christy, do you have the timer on?
When will we have the results?
The timer.
From the testing blitz this weekend?
So the testing blitz, we're hoping to get information within 48 hours. My EPI team is following up on that, and I believe we actually have some results today. So, or they're starting to trickle
The
into there
attorney's
tomorrow.
telling me we're overextending this and getting into too many discussions that have nothing to do with the budget.
Right.
That's what happens when you have attorneys.
And I
That's
can
why
come
we're
back
cutting down the.
and do an update specific for this. I don't mean to take up any time.
No, it's fine. We asked you. So thank you very much. But guys, do you have any questions about the budget? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have the Library District. Lisa Mendez, Library Directors, available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 157, staffing page 159 through 160.
Ah, you brought in the crew.
Chairman Reyes, Lisa Mendez is Library Director. We're happy and we understand that the recommendations will have to wait based on what happens and so.
No, it's a matter of whether the budget that it's in front of us deals with what your needs are. And are you okay with the budget?
Yes.
Right, so you're okay with the budget and you understand that it's just a budget. It's a sort of a roadmap into what we think, you'll be doing the critical, I think the critical part would be when we start talking about the revenues and whether the revenues are going to be coming in as we projected them in the past. And I think that the answer to that is going to be, I'm sure to everybody that they're not. So we're going to be watching that very closely. Okay? You okay with your budget?
Yes.
Any questions from the board? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Public Fiduciary. Candy Wheeler Ruby, Public Fiduciary, is available for any questions. Department pages begin page 113, staffing page 114.
We'll be back there. Mrs. Wheeler?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, I'm Candy Wheeler Ruby, Yuma County Public Fiduciary. I reviewed the budget recommendation by the BRT and my office is good. We're happy with the recommendations that are being made.
It's this situation that we're going through cost any additional demand from your department?
It has changed the way that we have been able to handle business. We have all of our clients are in that high risk. And so they're mostly in groups homes, nursing homes, assisted living homes. So those facilities have been locked down and they've locked down pretty early on, which was great because it's really helped not to have any of those issues come up. But it has changed the way that we've had to be able to see our clients. We're getting really good at Zoom and really good at FaceTime, and a lot of teleconferences are happening because we're just not able to get in and see them in person. So it has changed the way we've had to do things.
But you feel comfortable with the budget to handle those?
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Susan, the new positions that are being recommended, are we going to wait until January to fill those?
That's our recommendation at this point, is to wait until we can see the revenue.
Did you understand that?
I did, yes.
Okay.
And we're okay with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, Ms. Wheeler, thank you very much. If you're happy, we're happy.
Thank you.
Next, we have Housing. Jesus Roldan, Housing Director, is available for any questions. Department pages begin page 131, staffing 132.
Okay. All right.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes and members of the board. Jesus Roldan, Housing Director.
I want to remind the members of the board that essentially that department's a HUD.
Yes,
It's a department basically technically paid by HUD. We sort of oversee it as a board, but in reality, their budget has to be approved by HUD. The plans have to be approved by HUD. The rents have to be approved by HUD. Everything has to be approved by HUD. At the end of the day, the question is, are you okay with the budget?
Yes, we are.
Do you have any reservations about what may or may not happen if your renters start not to paying rent and doing those things? Have you seen any signs of that?
We had a meeting with HUD telephonically, and they answer all those questions. As a matter of fact, we received, in case something happens, an extra funds for that to cover.
Good. That was, I guess that's
And
what I
that's for
wanted.
low rent and also for Section 8, so.
Okay. That was a concern of mine. I mean, that people, hear in the newspaper, or hear in the radio, see in the newspaper, or see on TV that there's a waiver of eviction processes, or a moratorium on eviction processes, and then people take the wrong attitude about it. But because it's all hard managed and hard control, I guess they're dealing with that.
Yeah,
with
they're
you.
doing, as a matter of fact, they're giving us a lot of leeway to, so that's good for us.
Any questions?
No, I just want to commend you on doing a great job when you took over.
Yeah.
How's the refrigerators out there? Are they okay?
Everything.
Okay, good. Then that would be a question that Supervisor McLeod would always be concerned about. So
We have a
thank
great
you.
team, so we're working, getting things that we're supposed to be done, so.
Thank you. You guys are doing a great job. Public defender. I guess you guys don't know the refrigerator story, right? Supervisor McLeod? Oh, oh, well, it's too long to be told like this. One of these days we have a little more time. It's not in the agenda. The attorney would get on my case. Yeah, attorneys, what can I say? The public defender. He's not there? Well, we'll skip him. He'll come
Is he in
in.
the lobby?
The legal defender?
Public defender.
Oh, no, I know, but is he here? No? Oh, they're on this side? Ah, okay. Well,
Supposed to be
I
watching
don't know.
this show.
Who was issuing the passes to be inside?
First come, first serve.
No, but I mean, there's plenty of space inside. I mean, they could have sort of spread.
They're in the
spread 'em.
lobby next door.
Oh, I know. I mean, I know it's scary to be in front of us right now, but there's plenty of space. Now, we're not very comfortable with
So you
silence.
go ahead and tell them the refrigerator.
Oh, the refrigerator story. No. As soon as I start telling that story, somebody's going to come up and break it up. So why don't you start it? We have what do you call it? A life expectancy.
Yeah.
What do we call those?
Wait, so you can
What do
tell
we
the
call
story.
those? What do we call those? Life expect? No, not life expectancy.
Life cycle.
Life cycle. We had a life cycle issue with some refrigerators, I think, at one time. Supervisor McLeod was asking if there really was a need to replace the refrigerators.
Chairman,
Replace all the refrigerators at the same time, and he was asking, why are we replacing all the refrigerators at the same time? Because they're the same age, right?
Chairman Reyes, we're waiting for public defender and legal defender. We're going to move on to financial services. Gil Villegas, Chief Financial Officer, is available for any questions. Department pages begin page 117, staffing pages 119.
The legal defender, I think, came in, or public defender, which one is it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Gil Villegas,
Can have
Chief
a,
Financial Officer.
okay, Gil, go ahead.
In regards to the financial service budget, we're very happy with it. We had a little increase in our line items, which we're very happy with it too as well.
Why are you happy with the increase?
Actually, no, it's more work for us, so
Oh, you had an increased number of
yes, an
improvement
increased
districts.
number. One of the proposed items for the next budget year, financial services is going to be taking over paying
Continue. I know, it's.
gas and paying the
That's why the
the
increase.
water. That's why the increase. Our line items continue the same. I did a little adjustment within the line items, but the bottom line did not increase.
Okay.
So, is there any
We don't have
questions?
anyone that turned in their information late. We don't have anyone dismissing their information. There was a point in time, some time ago, where one of the cities didn't turn out their tax rate.
Are you talking about the improvement districts now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
I haven't got to that, to the rates yet. We're just going through the budget process. When all this is completed, then I'm gonna start contacting all those special districts so they can send me the
Also, we're
dollar
dealing
rate.
with the ones inside, yeah, once you have control.
I also have a brief presentation on improvement districts, if there are no questions for finance.
Is there a need?
Yes, I usually
Okay,
provide
all right.
a high-level summary.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yes.
I'll try to make it quick, Supervisor Reyes. You should have two handouts for the improvement districts. One has all the detailed information, all the funds that we have, all the improvement districts is the legal
One that
size
has a
piece of
folder?
paper. Yeah. And I have copies in color. I just noticed that they are black and white if needed.
We'll figure that the dark ones, the ones in the darker are the ones that's supposed to have color, right? How many colors did you use?
Just two.
Okay, well then fine. The ones in white are one color and the ones in dark is the other color.
Is the other one.
And why are they highlighted?
And the second handout, I'll go over that in a minute. The second handout is the the
I
list.
want to know right now.
The list of improvement districts that they're going to require, thank you Supervisor Pancrasi, they're going to require additional services. So usually what I provide to the board is a high-level summary of an improvement districts. We have a total of 166 funds that we manage. Usually they're divided in three categories: general purpose, street lighting, irrigation, water. We have three special assessment districts that pretty much take care of debt service. Debt that they have issue, and we're servicing that debt. One capital improvement districts and one revolving fund. For this year, we have identified two new districts, Premier Storage Unit 2, Phase 3, and TACNA Water Irrigation. You had an item this morning. Also, we have identified 17 districts that we can go ahead and start solving. It has to be done via board action. Back in November, we got together the treasurers, the assessors, and finance departments, and we started discussing the districts that either were duplicates and needed to be erased, or the ones that had no activity. So we have a total of 17. Pretty soon we'll be doing a board item so they can be dissolved. This is a high-level summary of all the administrative costs that we're going to have for the next fiscal year, 2021. And if you recall, back in 2017, I believe, we had this structure set up. It's pretty much driven by the amount of time our improvement district coordinator spent with any of those districts that I have highlighted. And that's the cost that the general fund charges and the cost that the revolving fund charges for each one of them. Of course, the ones where we spend more time either handling their invoices or handling their projects, they are the ones that are going to have a greater allocation and cost.
That's what your multiplier is?
That's what the multiplier is.
How did, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
How did we end up with duplicate districts? You know?
I think sometimes it was because of the setup. We thought it was going to be an improvement district, and at the end, it happens to be a special service district with their own board, and they make their own, they have their own agendas and all that. So we set up the fund, and now we need to go in, and it has been no activity, so we need to go in and delete it.
How long does it have to have no activity?
5 years.
5 years?
And I have a detailed listing of all the districts that we have identified. The majority of them, they're 5 years or more with no activity. So we really do wait for them, and just to make sure there's going to be nothing.
And what are you, the one with fund balance, how is that given back?
We have, I believe, 2 with fund balances, and we're going to have to go back and refund that money to the residents of that district.
Okay, whoever owns the properties today.
Okay.
We have 74 general purposes improvement districts, a total appropriations of $1.3 million. It's pretty much the same appropriation. We try to avoid the fluctuation or the increase on fees in all the districts. Sometimes it's unavoidable because they're going to have new services that we're going to provide, new projects that they're going to have. But for this particular category, it was only an $11,000 increase. We have 7 improvement districts that had increased 15% or more. And those are the ones that are highlighted in your summary.
Mm-hmm. So Del Sur, Pastel de Prado, yeah, some of those.
And what's driving that?
That's the activity that they're going to have, or sometimes they have a specific project
that needs to be done.
that needs to be done. If you have a specific question about a specific district, And I apologize, I neglected to recognize and acknowledge
Rachel.
Rachel Sarworth, our improvement district coordinator, and Elsa Garcia.
That
she's our
didn't help.
accountant. Street lights, we have 48 districts, and once again, we try to remain pretty much the same appropriation as compared to the prior fiscal year. For improvement districts have increases of 15% or more. I have to say, sometimes we need to increase our assessment because we would like to keep at least a 25% fund balance. Sometimes for some improvement districts, because they are so small, 25% means $500 or some insignificant amount. We have to do that, try to increase so we can have a good reserve for them.
What's driving the fire district assistance?
I'm sorry?
What's driving the fire district assistance?
The fire district's assistance?
What is that?
And one thing that I forgot to remove from that list that you received, fire improvement district is 1900, I believe. What it is, Martinez Lake is coming online with an improvement district. And by statute, every time a new fire district comes in, we are supposed to set up a fund, an assistance fund, and collect up to 20% of their total budget. It's driven by statute, and I have the statute and everything ready for you if you need to see it, but it's not going to be an improvement district. It's going to be a special district. Yuma County is going to be managing that. We're going to be collecting the funds for them. The total amount, the total assessment is only going to be $51,000, and that's going to be assessed through the entire Yuma County. So the rate is going to be 0.004% increase.
What's driving it? They started a new district, a new fire district?
Yes, Martinez Lake started a new fire district.
Oh, they already had one.
I guess this is the first year when they're going to do the assessment and they're going to start collecting from the people. The only district that I was aware of Martinez Lake was the road improvement district. I guess they have established that fire district long in the past, and they just never utilized or they never assessed any money.
They had it, but they never really had a board put together or identified. But with Rural Metro pulling out now, they're pulling all that back together to try to get something going.
Yeah, and it should have not made this list. I apologize. What happened when I was working on the budget, I needed to assign a fund number. So the next fund in line was that 1900, and but it's not going to be considered to be an improvement district. Yes.
Mr. Chair and
Sure.
Gil, all of Yuma County is going to pay it, or just Martinez Lake is going to pay it?
My understanding is the entire Yuma County.
The whole county has to contribute.
Mm.
And it's 20% of their budget.
Are you looking at the list? I have a question on one specific district.
Go ahead.
The Gadsden Sewer District. They had a very high fund balance. The budget activity was very low. The fund balance recommended 25%. The parcel's 142. Is that nearing his end, or how did it accumulate that much that we don't have anything budgeted?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer the question to Rachel. She can help us with that.
What fund number is it?
1978.
1978.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember that because it was done just prior to me coming on the board. They had a problem. Well, they didn't have a problem. Well, they had a septic problem, but then they fixed it by connecting to the city of San Luis sewer, and they paid. A lot of people were supposed to pay a lot of money eventually to make sure that they cover that. It was one of those grant and loan, but I'm just a little surprised that they had this fund balance as of 6/30. Well, they were supposed to, or not had. I guess will have a fund balance, and then it goes to zero. Is it coming close to its end, or?
No, it is, I'm sorry, it is not coming close to its end. It was originally, when it was originally started, like, I think it was like 2001 or something like that. They started accumulating monies in order to address any issues of operations and maintenance that were not addressed as part of the IGA with San Luis. Became apparent that it was not going to be needed at that point, and then I'd asked them to stop collecting on that, but Jill will take care of whatever needs to be, and that's been a few years now, so.
All right.
So it'll get returned to them.
It goes directly back to the property owner, that's correct. In this case, yes.
Which may be different than the property owner who actually started with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
20 years ago. All right, okay, it was just weird the way it looked. All right, so, any more questions on, continue with the presentation.
I'm just going to go to the last section, irrigation water, 39 districts that we have. They're experiencing a little more of an increase, $14,000, $14,455. But only 3 improvement districts actually increased more than 15%. Their assessment as compared to the prior fiscal year. The 3 special assessment districts that I was talking about, they're pretty much to serve the debt. El Prado has been paid. We have Gazen, with still $126,909 outstanding, and BNC Colonial. Those are the invoices that financial services take care of to the constituents so they can come and make their payments. We have 1 capital improvement, and the recommended budget is $193,918. We need to revise that amount. I think it's less than that.
How much was the BNC Colonia project?
Oh, it was
23? And they only have $2 million outstanding? 2,255,000? Wow.
Pretty good.
This is very nice.
Well, it's all that money that flowed in.
Yeah,
remember?
yeah.
Yeah, it got a lot of federal grant money.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Well, it was just incredible. I mean, that 20-some million dollar project.
There was only 17% that was actually the loan. The balance of that was grant. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, you see, that's what happens when you're out there. And also physical distancing.
That was significant, and you won't see that again probably ever. But out of 23, almost 24 million, 17% was loan. The balance was grant to take care of everything.
We remember. I mean,
I
that's
remember
why I
that.
brought this
Wow.
up. I mean, yeah.
Yes,
We never
that
thought
was,
it could
that
get
was
done.
because of Grijalva's efforts. Am I correct?
It was during the last, when it was a stimulus package that got out, and this was one of those ready-to-go projects that they
Oh,
wanted to
that
get
was ready to
going.
go, and so we
So-
got
The
it.
original
Got it.
issuance was $3,437,000, and it's set
Out of
to
24.
expire in July 2035.
Okay, all right.
This is our revolving fund. This is the fund that supports the creation of the new districts and supports the operations of the coordinator, going out to the improvement districts, helping them set it up if it's going to be a new improvement district, and helping organize their projects as well. And with that, that's all I had for the improvement districts. Any other questions that we have?
We asked them as you were moving through them. We asked, is there anything else? That's it?
It's a high-level summary.
I still want to talk to you later about the county fire district later. Not that,
Much later.
much later.
Yeah, it's driven
Thank
by
you.
statute.
All right,
Okay.
let's
It is
move
driven
on
by
then to
statute.
the next item.
Next, we have Public Defender, Michael Breeze. Public Defenders available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 165, staffing on page 166.
Michael, are you happy with your budget?
Yeah, Chairman Reyes, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'd like to recognize the budget review team. They have a tough job, and they've done it well this year. I don't envy them next year. It's going to be a tough year that we're looking forward to. So we're going to try and be as tight as we can this coming year. What I'd like to do is review for the board some of the successes we've had. Most notably, we have a full roster of interns this year. 3 law school interns, 1 from U of A, ASU, and 1 from California. Out of San Diego, we also have an undergrad intern at the Barrett College, the Honors College at ASU, who wants to volunteer with us. So we've been successful that way. And appreciate following finance so that when I say I'm going to be brief, I'd like to be measured against what Gil's performance. Our returning recruitment and retention, we've kept it down to 12% for vacancy, 6% overall. Our attorney, we've retained 74.92% of the higher felony cases. That's the most serious felonies. We try and do that so that they don't get sent ultimately out to contract lawyers. It costs the county a lot of money, so that's one of the things that we're doing. We also observe from our perspective that we're doing a superior job with representation of these people. Our juvenile adjudication, we've kept 82% of the criminal matters at juvenile, and that's between our attorney that's assigned there and our contract attorney. Our cost per case has been kept at $1,180.54 average, and our most current effort is to assist in the creation of Veterans Court.
Good.
Yes.
To be brief, I followed that, and I would like to entertain questions, or maybe they'll entertain me.
Well, we would like you to compare yourself to some of the other people prior to Hill, in the brevity. But
I noticed, that's why I expected to be called a couple hours later than this, but that's all I have unless there's more.
So you haven't listed, there's no
Four
more.
cases you're able to keep,
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
wonderful.
and $1,100 per. That's
That's excellent.
remarkable.
It's remarkable. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's good. Thank you very much. Right? So, what's next? That's it? Legal and public defender?
Ooh. Speaking for the legal defender, I'd just like to report that they have 2 interns from the law schools, and we were able to secure, and we'd like to thank the community for supporting our efforts. They volunteered housing for both the legal defender and the public defender interns. So
Oh, nice.
shout out to the community. Yuma is a generous place. Even especially, I think, in light of the COVID crisis, there's going to be a natural reluctance to have strangers come into your house, but the community has been generous nevertheless.
Okay,
Nice.
nice, thank you. Thank you, and that takes care of everybody we had supposed to listen to? Okay, well, 17, this is the interesting one. Discussion and direction regarding the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. Now, nobody's asked for more money, nobody's asked for less money, but nobody's asked for more money, so we're sort of following that process. And I guess to be able to discuss something, we would have to bring an issue forth to discuss. At this particular time, I don't see any issues with the presentations. Are we going to open it up to discuss some of the issues? I mean, I noticed that Supervisor McLeod, for example, asked about the delay or the set-asides or something. You want to address that, or you want to address it tomorrow at the end of this whole process so that we can have all the issues, if any, ready to discuss? What's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to wait until the end of tomorrow, until the end of tomorrow's hearings before we get into recommendations?
Me.
Well, no, you might want to discuss them today so that you have time to prepare.
Okay, well, I mean, the only issue that's left for me, and because I don't know if we have it in the board, is the list of items that we are sort of willing to put in that line item that says we may be postponing this. And there was a list of items, and during the presentation that you gave me, and I suppose you gave to the rest of the board, there was a list of items that you guys set aside. What do you call them? Sequestered or something like that? You sequestered them. One of them was a pay raise, and I wanted to talk about that. I was going to wait until tomorrow maybe, but I don't know. Maybe today is a good day to start. It only took us an hour to go through the whole agenda of today.
Except we still have the public defender.
Legal.
Where's the public? Oh, the legal. Oh, sorry.
I mean, the legal defender.
I'm sorry, I thought Mr. Breeze.
Yeah, he did. That's why I thought.
For both of us, I just wanted to make certain.
Come in. Come forward.
Thank you.
Okay. I saw you come in, but Lynn is always telling us hi to anybody. So I didn't even.
So it's a pleasure to see you all under the circumstances. And if there were any questions about our budget, I think I did hear that the public defender did a good job answering questions about both of our offices.
Yeah, he talked about the interns. He talked about the costs as you kept, the costs down and working. So we heard those. Is there anything you would like to bring out in the budget? Are you okay with the budget?
No, other than to thank you and appreciate the support again, as usual. It's an extremely supportive process. It's a very helpful process. I have absolutely no complaints about it. Truth.
Good.
Great.
So we'll
Let
try
us
to
do
work
that.
within what you award us.
Yeah, let us do that. Let us complain about the process.
Not today.
All right.
Not today. I feel like we have enough on our plates.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, no, thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thank you. Let's go back to the interesting questions that we had.
Well,
Raises.
I wanted to bring up, I cannot support the recommended budget. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I can't. It's a property tax increase at a time that we shouldn't be increasing property taxes. I did speak to Mr. Villegas, asked him to put together a budget that left us at our benchmark at 20% fund balance. I would like the board to entertain what that budget looks like.
I would too.
And I've heard that. I've heard that during this particular times, it's going to be difficult to justify any kind of increase on anything. The problem that I have with that concept is that essentially we're not increasing the property tax rate. Technically, what's increasing the property tax is the evaluation process.
Right.
See, and that to me is very difficult to measure because some people are going to get their properties evaluated higher, and other people are not. Some people are going to get a devaluation in their property, and other people are not. So you're not going to be even. If you lower the property tax rates, you're not giving the same break to everybody. You're only giving that break to people who will have a higher evaluation of the property. You know, to me, we're going to have a problem to begin with because I don't think that the property taxes are going to be paid at the same rate that we had in the past. Instead of the 1 or 2% unpaid taxes at the delinquent taxes, we're going to have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7%. So this isn't, to me, this isn't the time you go ahead and lower the tax rate, knowing that we don't know what the revenues are going to be, knowing that we're going to be getting less revenues from sales taxes, we're going to be getting less revenues from every other source that we get. So how do you go about making a problem that's going to be bad even worse by doing something like lowering tax rates at this particular time? You're not going to be having the same impact with everyone, as far as I'm concerned. So I understand the push to do that, but it's going to be bad enough as it is.
And you got to remember that our small businesses are suffering greatly. Some of them won't even be able to come back, and they bear the largest burden. I mean, they're taxed at 18%, residential's at 10%. I just don't think this is a time to be increasing tax burden.
Okay, let me back up a little bit. How would you be able to figure what that decrease would be to actually impact only the commercial properties?
No, you wouldn't. You can't.
See, that's what my
It's
point
everybody.
is.
But it still leaves a healthy fund balance. We'll have to be right at our benchmark. It will still be a tax increase. I'll acknowledge that, just not so much.
Well, okay. You did a formula, Hill, that basically included new construction and and property evaluation. How much was that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that the best approach to this, so we can continue with this conversation, we have to go and start revising the numbers that were provided to you back in February. That will put us into a frame of mind or set up, how do we think we're going to finish the year? After we have an idea how we're going to finish the year, then we can dive into the line items of the budget. Or if it is the pleasure of the board, I can just go directly to the budget. But my intention was to first go over the new projections that we had for the end of the fiscal year and the reasons behind it.
Look, I understand the pressure. But we run a small business ourselves. This is the small business we run, and we don't know what the revenues are going to be. So right now, what you're asking for, Supervisor McLeod, is you're asking us to blindly go forth and change the income calculations based on the fact that we all know we're not going to get enough revenues, which is almost the opposite of what a business would do. a business it's not run by when your revenues are coming down, reducing it even more. A business runs the opposite way. When revenues are coming down, you make sure that you increase your revenue some way. And basically, government, although it's not a regular business, that's what we're entitled to do. We're entrusted to keep this business of government going. I understand all those arguments, and I tell you, I'll be willing to look at it because I think that's what we should do. But I want to remind everyone that the only reason we can even be looking at this is because of the conservative actions we have taken over the years to make sure that we get to a point where we can actually do this. My concern was that the state government and even the federal government was going to look at us and the way we run the county for years and say, well, you guys got this huge reserve, so why don't you cut into it before you ask for support? And that is not that bad when we have the resources, but it's certainly not the way you run the future or not the way you prepare for the future. So I want everybody to take that into consideration. I know that cutting taxes will be popular. I know that reacting to the concerns of the businesses and the citizens of Yuma County, it's what we're sent here to do. But I also want you to balance that out with the fact that and I know that revenues are not going to be the same. I don't need you to get the last 2 months of this year to know what it's going to look like. If the economy is contracted 4.8% nationwide, I'll tell you, it's contracted even worse in Yuma County. So yes, I can understand the desire that we have to help people out, but what good would it do if you run your county in a way that you won't be able to do the things that you're supposed to do, like fix your roads and do the things we need to do?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Gil, I'm not talking about reducing any line items. I'm just talking about leaving the fund balance right at 20%, which is our benchmark. So it'd be same budget, using a little bit more of our reserves. To your point, we'll show the state, we're using money that we had saved through good stewardship to balance our budget. And
that's what Russell and I asked at our briefing the other day.
No, and I've heard that, and I'm not. The problem with cutting your taxes down is that you only make the situation worse when you have to go back to some sort of normal services. Because what happens is that we already are below what we can assess. And we've been keeping that, promise. As a matter of fact, even last year or the year before last, we did the same thing. We just tinker with the who pays what, but we really haven't increased the tax rate.
No,
we used to run the county based on not the tax rate. We used to run it based on the, what do you call it? The levy. The levy, which meant that whatever the levy was, whatever it took us to run the county, we set the tax rate to that levy. So that meant that every once in a while we would reduce the tax rate because the levy was the same. The value was going up. We did that for a while, and we found that it worked sometimes. But then as soon as we had a big issue, we went back to the tax rate. Now, I think this is a time we do some soul searching. I'm not dismissing this idea. Of course I'm not. I just want to make sure that we take a cold look at the fact that, look, to me, the issue was making a salary adjustment. That was the issue to me. And I mentioned that during my meeting, that I felt that, we did all the things we did in years past and created a healthy reserve, because when the time came, we would realize that we have first responders within our system, which is the chair of the department and their people. We have nurses in the health department. This is not the time that I would pick to tell them, you're getting nothing this year because of this crisis. We are a service organization. We don't build masks or sell things. We sell service. And the people that are doing that are the people that we're talking about when we're talking about a salary. So I wanted to make that argument. I understand the tax argument. I feel that there's some things in there in the budget that we may be able to put off for a year. Things like feeding the, what do you call that? The reserve, the fleet management. The fleet management. We don't have to put $1.5 million this year into, of our reserves into fleet management. They could wait. We could actually delay buying the vehicles. I know the sheriff is not going to like to hear that, but we could delay that for 6 months. And actually have a healthy situation where we could reduce taxes a little bit if that's what you guys would want. and that we can pay our people, you know, a salary increase. I mean, a 2% salary increase, a 1% salary increase, it's nothing out there, but it's something.
Mr. Chairman, they've got jobs. And there are tens of thousands of people who don't have jobs right now, and they pay the bill. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
You know, people need to be happy that they have a job. And I think it's prudent, the plan that the BRT came up with, to wait until January, because we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what's happening with revenues, and it's prudent to wait.
But we know what's happening now, and those people are stepping up in the front of everybody, you know, putting their lives at risk and doing the work that we ask them to do. You know, this is the time you try to, you know, motivate those people to do a better job. This isn't the time to tell them, well, you know, if the money comes in, we'll give you your salary increase. The fact is, if the money doesn't come in, we have other places we can cut. And we have plenty of places we can cut, as far as I'm concerned. So that's going to be, I mean, everybody's going to have to wait that. I mean, the arguments, and this is what this is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about some, you know, Supervisor McLeod wanting to cut taxes. It's supposed to be about somebody else saying, look, I don't think we ought to do it in the backs of the employees. And it's going to be, you know, a discussion that will take place tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully by then you'll have some numbers on what a tax cut would mean in terms of revenues. And we can, you know, there's no reason we can't do both. It's just that it's going to be very difficult for me to see how you balance that out, unless you have a magic.
It's just use of reserve. That's all it is. The budget doesn't change, not a single line item.
Well, go ahead, Susan.
So if you want to start this discussion and start doing some what-ifs this afternoon, I think what would be helpful is to make sure that the public knows where we're coming from and knows the evolution of this budget, because the board has been briefed before, but the public has not seen this. And anybody who's watching we want to give them the perspective that went into the thought process for the recommended budget. So that's why Gil wanted to go through this year, what we're projecting for this year, and then next year in the interactive spreadsheet, and then talk through your what ifs that you'd like to consider. Either we could do it today, and we could also do it again tomorrow. If there's additional things that you hear from departments that you really want to consider, and we can change line items and see what the bottom line looks like, including taxes, including not holding off on salaries, you know, putting other things in the sequestered column, those kinds of things that we can walk through. But if we want to do that, it's helpful for the public and anybody who's watching to have that background of how we got to the recommended budget that we're presenting today.
Yeah, it provides transparency in what we're doing.
Right. Is that okay? We can proceed?
I can see that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you should have two handouts today. The one that is marked handout number 1 is the one that pretty much revises the numbers that were provided to you back in February. Needless to say, back in February, it was a completely different situation. We didn't know anything about the COVID-19. That has drastically changed our numbers, our projections, and pretty much everything. So the first step that we wanted to do for your benefit, for the benefit of the public, the county administrator said, was we needed to go back and revise those February numbers. The spreadsheet that I'm going to present to you has 3 columns, actually four columns. The first column, just for your reference, is our current budget, fiscal year 1920. These are the numbers that got approved during the budget process early in the fiscal year. The next column, titled Fiscal Year 1920, projected February, these are the numbers that we provided to you back in February. And of course, the column where I'm going to be concentrating most of the time is the new revised fiscal year 1920 numbers. To make, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on our 3 major sources of revenue, property taxes, our local sales taxes, and the state share taxes. Those are the ones that got reviewed, and those are the ones that we have been monitoring pretty much since February. First of all, we're going to start with the property taxes. Back in February, we were using an average, or how the county has been doing in the past. We've been doing great collecting taxes. We were averaging 99% of our levy, 98% of our levy. Based on the current situation, after conversation that I had with the Treasurer's Office, what I have done, I have decided, or we have decided, the BRT have decided to increase the uncollectible to 3.5%. Why 3.5% uncollectible? I actually went back to 08, 09. That's when we had our last recession. And that was the number of uncollectibles that we had, 3.5%. Different situations, they don't compare, but that should give us a good parameter what to expect for the remainder of the current fiscal year. I checked the numbers before coming down here, the collections, and as of March, we have not posted April yet. As of March, we're trending exactly where we were the last 2 years. 62% of everything has been collected from the taxpayers. In addition to increasing the allowance for uncollectible, we got notification from the assessor's office that there are going to be some refunds that we're going to have to do based on some legislation that we need to pay the solar companies to the tune of $321,000. I have included that amount here as well as a reduction to our collections. So the new amount that we're going to show, the revised for our property tax is $30,019,000, a total of $962,000 reduction from the number that was provided to you back in February. County sales taxes, it was a very challenging number to come out with, like Supervisor Reyes, Chairman Reyes said. We don't have any data right now, any solid data to tell us where this economy is going. This is merely based on what we have seen outside with the businesses, we have seen in our community what is going on. Just to give you a little more of information, back in February, I had the numbers for November, the actual numbers. We were trending 12% above the prior fiscal year. I continue monitoring that line item. The latest numbers that I got was mid-April, and those were for February actuals. February, we were up to 14% above the prior fiscal year. So the first 8 months, the Yuma County was doing very well in regards to county sales taxes, and I think that's going to have an impact in that final number. That's going to help us to lower the impact on our reductions.
Yeah, for April, May, June, yeah.
For March, April, May, and June. So what I have done is based on the new number that we received for the February actuals, we did a new projection, and then we decided just to account for half of those total collections for the last 4 months, March, April, May, and June. Even though in March we had a semi-good month, I'm using March to be a little bit of a buffer in the event that the numbers are lower than 50%. That amount counts to $12,722,000, a total reduction of $1,960,000, significant impact to our economy. The other number is state share of sales tax. We usually get around $23-24 million. February, the number that we provided was above our budget because they were doing so well as well, around 9% above the prior year, 8-9%. February, they still showing 12% above prior fiscal year. Granted, usually in the summer, the collections go down, our receipts go down a little bit, but actually following their model, whatever presentation they had to their financial advisory committee, we are implemented the same criteria that they have. According to their numbers for the sales taxes, they're going to see a reduction of 2.5% from the prior fiscal year. So that's what we are using here right now with that $22,271,000. That accounts for 2.5% less than the prior fiscal year. I did adjustment to the rest of the revenues, checking on the trending, how they were doing. Like I said, we're following very close all the activity that we have had since February all the way to March. The other significant adjustment that I had to make was to find some forfeits. Collections for JP3, I believe they're not coming as expected. Also, because of this COVID-19, I guess there's not as much activity as it was in the beginning. So we're going to have a total impact of $104,000 reduction. In regards to the sources, fairly quickly, we're estimating the impact to be 4,936,000 reduction from the number that was provided to you in February. At the same time, I had an opportunity to go and revise the expenditures. Personnel services, what I do, I just take the last payroll, I project that out for the remaining of the pay periods, and I just add the history. We were able to identify another $140,000 in savings for that expenditure line item. Some positions are not being filled, temporary positions are not carried, so we have additional savings. Supplies and services, again, looking at the trending, how they're doing, another $205,000. At the beginning of this crisis, the county administrator and administration sent out memos to departments, asking them to limit the travel only for those that was necessary. It was absolutely that they didn't have to attend. Also, we have reached out to departments and asked them to do only what is essential for your operations. It's not a lot of savings because we still have expenditures that we need to do, some of them related to the COVID-19. But nevertheless, we were able to identify another $205,000 in savings, supplies, and services. Summarizing the general fund, back in February, we were projecting to have $91 million in revenues. The reality now is that we're going to have 86 million, the projections, 86,170,000. Uses, not much variation from what we have done in February. $88 million, now $87.7 million. My last comment during the February presentation was that we were doing so well at the beginning of the fiscal year that we were estimating that the general fund was going to end up with another $3 million in fund balance. That is not the situation anymore because of the total impact of $4.6 million. Now we're going to be digging into our reserves to an amount of $1,534,000. Our fund balance is going to be reduced from 33.84% projected in February to the new number that we have right now, which is 28.71% for current fiscal year. That is the general fund summary of the revised numbers. I have done the same exercise to the districts that was presented to you, jail, health, and
Library.
the library district. Thank you. Any questions on the general fund?
Yeah. So there you have it. It's going to be $5 million less so far.
Mm-hmm. So fairly quickly for the jail district.
Go ahead. Sorry, just finish it.
Jail district, again, they're going to have a significant impact on the sales taxes. Unfortunately for them, this is their source of revenue. $1.9 million is going to have a significant impact in them. I did the same exercise, went back, checked on the personnel, supplies and services, identify additional savings. Total impact to the jail district is going to be $1,624,000. Make it that bigger. Back in February, because of the local sales tax collections, we were estimating the fund balance to be increased by another $767,000. That's not going to be the case anymore. Now we're going to be digging in their reserves in the amount of $857,000. Their fund balance is going to be drawn to 6.06%. The library district property taxes, they get impact of property taxes, apply the same criteria, 3.5% reserve for uncollectibles, accounted for all those refunds that we need to do for the solar project. They were expected to eat into their fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, $88,000. That's going to be a larger amount. Now we're estimating $171,000. Their fund balance now is going to be 34.67%. Health district, sales taxes again, the total impact for them that we're estimating is a reduction of $420,000. We were able to identify additional savings in supplies and services. It's because, again, they're utilizing most of their grant and they're active getting more grants. Back in February, the projection was $890,000 increase to the fund balance. That's not the case any longer. It's going to be $237,000 still an increase to their fund balance. So from all the district, the health district is the one that is doing best. Their ability to use their grants has really helped them to have this fund balance. Now, this is just the revised numbers, and this is what pretty much lays the foundation how we start building our budget for the next fiscal year 2021. If there are any questions, I can go on the next spreadsheet.
Question.
Yes.
The actual reserve, it's made up of all these fund balances, correct?
No, it's by fund, each individual fund.
So each individual fund has a different reserve.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. There's a reason I'm asking the question, obviously, because we're not only thinking of the property tax rate, we're also thinking of the health district and the library district and the flood control district and so forth. So it's interesting to see different funds have different balances. Some of them are healthier than others. In a situation where you have to, or you're looking at lowering taxes, the tax rate, that's part of the roadmap to get there.
Correct.
Because what we have now is a sort of an overall tax rate that includes every one of these different tax rates for different districts into one single amount, which we call the tax rate.
Mr. Sherman, yeah, that's the combined tax
Combined
rate.
tax
But we're able to identify individually the tax rate for the general fund,
And in
the
this
library
year-
district,
Yeah.
and the flood control
In
district.
this year, there was, if I remember correctly in the presentation, there was some sort of a shift that was done between the flood control, I think, and it was at the library, right? The flood control in the library. There was some suggestion that we raise one and lower the other one to keep the combined tax rate
That's
the
what we
same.
did last year.
That's what they suggested initially.
Yeah, in the library district, we have their operations. We levy property taxes for their operation, but we also have to levy taxes for their debt service, the general obligation debt service that is outstanding. So as we pay into the debt service, usually the principal payment requirements are lower. And because of the assessed valuation increase, then the rate usually gets adjusted downward a little bit. Because we know that the library district is having issues with their operational fund balance. What we have done, or what the board has done in past years, is to increase the operation by the reduction in the debt service.
Okay.
Overall, it doesn't change.
All right. So you give us a summary of, you gave us a summary of what you think are going to be the possible losses on revenue.
Correct.
Now, there's discussion in the board here to lower the tax rate. So we're not just asking the rest of the board members or the board member that suggested that. You're not suggesting, Supervisor McLeod, Supervisor Pancrasi, are you suggesting that we lower the property tax rate on all of the districts, or are you suggesting we look at the general fund?
The general fund.
The general fund. Okay, so the other suggestions are okay. So the general fund, and you're suggesting that we try to immunize, that's not the right way, but I mean, to try to compensate, that's a better word, to compensate the possible impact that the tax rate, if we leave it the same, we're talking about the general tax, general property tax rate, that if we leave it the same, it's going to mean that some members of the public, some residents, and some businesses are going to be hit with increases simply because their valuation is going up, correct? So can you determine, just with the figures that you get from the assessors and the treasurer, what that impact would be? Because I think that the assessor uses a certain percentage to to raise the appraisal. He doesn't do appraisals of everybody every year. He has a formula that he was given by the state to apply to raise the evaluation of properties throughout the county. Now, do you know what that percentage is?
What we do, we'll look at the assessed valuation holistically with the entire amount. And what we do, we compare 1 year to the following year. And that's how we able to identify what was the increase in the assessed
Can you
valuation.
identify that increase and how much it would? 3.5?
3.48, right?
It's 3.48%, the assessed valuation.
So
from
what
1
you're
year to
looking
the-
at is saying, okay, look, we're gonna try to keep your tax the same, even though some of you would have gotten an increase, and others would have gotten a different one. Because there's people who actually make improvements to the home, whether it's a swimming pool or a fence or something that raises the property value. So what we're looking at now is trying to determine what 3.5% means in the budget and to adjust our tax rate to acknowledge that or to.
No, sort of.
Well.
Because if we, think, what it come out to if we just kept the levy level, the ending fund balance was projected to be 19.8 or something like that, is that right?
What I'd suggest is that we walk through the proposed budget so that we can get to the bottom line that you're referring to.
Yeah, okay.
So again, so the public knows
Sure, of course.
what numbers we're talking about. So if Gil can go through that.
So the recommended budget calls for the same tax rate as we have in the current fiscal year. First of all, I'm sorry, this is the handout number 2 that you should have in your package. And this spreadsheet is the same spreadsheet that we've been using the last 2 years. Done some modifications, and we pretty much list the numbers, the detail for the recommended budget. The spreadsheet has, again, the current budget for your reference purposes, the new projected revised numbers, and our recommended budget. It's the column where I'm going to be spending most of the time. Recommended budget for the fiscal year 2021. So just like I did with the projected figures, I'm going to go with the recommended budget. First, we're going to start with property taxes. Again, same tax rate with the new assessed levy. And what we're going to do, we're going to increase the allowance for uncollectibles. In the past, for budgetary purposes, we always do a 2%, 2.5% sometime allowance for uncollectibles. We don't budget the entire levy because we're estimating the certain money that we're not going to receive. This year, following the same percentage that we did for the projected, is going to be a 3.5 allowance for uncollectibles. But because of our levy was increased 3.48%, we're keeping the same rate. That's why we're going to be receiving, or we're budgeting, $31,395,000, which is a little above of our current budget. What is driving this is the increase in the assessed valuation.
And that, to clarify, that includes your 3.5% uncollectible,
That
right?
is correct.
Yeah, well, thank you.
County sales taxes, again, I'm just going to concentrate on 3. I can have more detail on the other line items if you want me to. But county sales taxes, based on what we have read, that there's going to be a quick recovery. Hopefully it will be soon. We're estimating to be a 4.5% increase from our estimate, from our 12,722,000. 4.5%, pretty much the average in the last 2 years. Fiscal year 18, we were averaging around 3% higher than the prior year. Fiscal year 19, it was a little over 5% than fiscal year 18. So we're comfortable with 4.5% increase. That's the number that we're budgeting. State, I am following the formula that they recommended in their presentation for sales tax, and that is an increase of 3.3% from their projection as well. Hence the number 23,600,965. So when it comes to state projections, we're just following their numbers, their projections.
When did you get those?
I believe it was a presentation down from the JLBC. April 10th. To the Finance Advisory Committee report.
They sound optimistic to me, but.
That sounds, yeah.
So the numbers that are following.
Well, you got to remember, that's the numbers, considering the last quarter is going to fall off the cliff.
Okay.
Their projection for the last quarter collections and sales taxes is 31% reduction. When county for our, it's a different economy, our local economy, we're projecting 50% uncollectibles.
Okay.
You will see that from our fiscal year 2021 and our current fiscal year 1920, revenues are pretty much flat. We don't expect a lot of increase. In total taxes, we have a $800,000 increase, and that's pretty much because it's driven by the property tax, the increase in assessed valuation. For intergovernmental sales tax, pretty much the big ticket item here, we actually budgeting less amount than the current fiscal year, around $500,000 less. Charge for services, we have a little increase, a little nominal increase, $100,000. So that's driven by the indirect cost plan that we put together every year. Everything else pretty much flat as compared to our current fiscal year. Fines and forfeits, $42,000 increase. Superior Court has been doing great when it comes to collecting their fines and forfeits. License and permits, this is pretty much based from the department. We have a close to $200,000 increase. That's based on the activity that we have received on different permits, building permits, plumbing, construction seems to be very affected by all this COVID-19. It continues, not at the same pace, so we're comfortable with that projection. Overall, total sources, our current budget was $88,842,000. For this recommended 2021, $89,500,000. Like I said, pretty much flat, not a lot of increases. What is recommended when it comes to expenditures for the fiscal year 2021? We're going to start with personnel. And one thing that I want to draw your attention to is the baseline. Current fiscal year baseline, we have $52 million. Our new baseline goes down to $51,850,000. We managed to lower that baseline a little bit. Open positions that are not being filled, we're budgeting them on step one. And there were situations that is not a lot, pretty much the same amount that we have. Also in the recommended budget, we have this negative number here, which in terms of personnel, savings that the Sheriff's Department are going to commit to. And the reason why they're committing to those personnel savings is because we're going to transfer those savings to their boat patrol program. The revenues for their boat patrol program are not coming in. So this is something that we implemented last year. It was $140,000. This year's $160,000. So you will see the offsetting transfer out later down in the line items. The budget calls for transfers and allocations for personnel to the general fund in the amount of $155,000. 3 new FTEs, total amount is $221,430. And this is one of the items that Susan was referring to. One part of the strategy that the BRT is recommending is to implement a hiring freeze until January 2021. So to reduce the actual impact that we're going to have for that particular budget. Still, we want to present the entire amount because that's what is going to happen for those positions to be in the following fiscal year. Salary holds, and OMB has a detail about what they are. $99,000, $747. Underfills, and we also, every year, we address a number of compression, market issues, and here is a list of all the departments and what we're trying to address. The assessors, the clerk superior court, sheriff superior court, all of them are listed for you. The total for all the market adjustments and compression amounts to $227,000. All these items are also being identified to be effective January 2021. Reclassifications is another item that or another issue that we do every fiscal year. Those are routed to the HR department, they review and they come to the BRT and for a recommendation. The last two items that we have in this category is, of course, the compensation. They half step, almost a 1% scale adjustment. That is across the board. Every time that we do something like this, we keep our employees marketable in constant with the market and also help us with the requirement for minimum wage. And also we have a anniversary performance half step. This is the total amount, $422,000. Back in February, the board asked us to contemplate what would be the number for a 2% scale adjustment. So for your reference and your reference only, I'm providing that number here. A 2% would be $927,867. The recommendation is only half a step, which is 1%.
And the other 0.5% is an anniversary performance, which is basically an exception in policy itself, right? I mean, only if they meet the requirements or exceed the requirements will they get that other half step, correct?
At the anniversary date of each employee, they're going to be evaluated on performance, and they have to have a meets or exceeds in order for them to qualify to the anniversary performance half step.
There was some confusion in my part when I first heard your presentation. I thought you were doing a presentation where you had, beginning July the 1st, you had that salary adjustment half step, and then you had the anniversary performance half step to be decided on January the 1st. But since then, I found out that you're delaying everything till January the 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree with that.
The anniversary
make sure.
performance, the half step, is going to be retroactive. That's the recommendation is to be applied on the employee's anniversary date. So if someone has the anniversary of July 2nd, that person will, if they meet the performance, meets or exceeds, that's when they're going to have their anniversary increase.
So if the person's anniversary is June 28th of 2021, that person isn't going to get a salary increase, correct?
Correct.
They'll get it on June 28th.
So that's not, it won't be retroactive to them. It'll only be retroactive to the people who have, if that happens, who have met or exceeded their reviews and have their anniversary date before December 31st
Right.
of this year.
And the board will vote on that in December.
I'm not going to agree to that, but you know, it's good. We can discuss that.
The board also asked for the incentive exceptional policy. It's not being recommended this time, but the total amount for that would be $77,057. That's just for your reference.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, Supervisor McLeod.
You know, if we don't budget that, then it doesn't happen. And I'd
For
like to hear
2021.
from Felicia about how successful the program is, how we measure that, how well received.
Chairman Reyes and Supervisor McLeod and members of the board, currently the exceptional incentive policy, it is the first time it will be enacted in the next month. So we will be submitting out information to all the departments and offices, reminding them for them to submit their individuals who have met that threshold up to the 10% of that department or office who have met or exceeded and meeting the criteria. So the data, we don't have it at this time to be able to identify how successful it may be or may not be. And so one of the recommendations is, as we presented to you in the past, is that we would bring forth any of the information to you to tell you what the outcome is. And then that would hopefully help you to better decide what you want to do moving forward into the next plan year. Because right now, we have not received any information. We just know that we're starting the process. So any of those individuals who are being submitted for this plan year, which was approved last July, their submission will be brought to you all the 1st of June. And then from there, through the criteria that we identified, We will then pay that out to those individuals the last full pay period in June. So it will then carry into the new plan year.
Mr.
So,
Sure, go ahead, Supervisor McLeod, finish up.
thank you.
Go ahead.
So what I want to ask the board to do is include that 77,000 in the budget that we put forward, because if we find out that it was very popular with the employees, that the department heads liked it, then the money is there to continue the program. If we get a report back later this year that says, you know, it pretty much flopped, then we don't expend it. The board would vote whether or not to continue the program. So I would like to see it plugged in.
Where would you get it from?
Pardon me?
Where would you get it from, the money?
The money is going to come from the reserves.
Or whatever we take in if it's
Or
a good
whatever.
year.
Why don't you just move the incentive accession policy and put it as instead of anniversary performance, just put an incentive exceptional policy and use that money to actually give people something substantial for their efforts, instead of just simply, paying, using $77,000 to incentivize a few. Use it as an incentive on the anniversary performance. Move the whole amount and just call it an incentive.
Oh, no, because it's only 10% of staff. That would be massive raises. Massive.
I get it now. So you're looking at 10%. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just looking at the 77,000.
Mr. Chair and Felicia,
Sure.
I've heard from different supervisors and just in conversation that they don't like singling out a particular employee as being better than the rest of their employees, that it causes disharmony and friction within their department. Have you heard that?
So Chairman Reyes and Supervisor Pancrasi, I've heard both sides. I've heard from employees that feel that way. I've heard that from elected officials and from department heads, but I've also heard it from some employees and some department heads. So it's like in between, and I believe the information that I brought to you to kind of share that with you at the time, that's why it was like moving forward, we'd identify exactly, is this going to be truly a program that we can carry on moving forward? And we don't have that data. So
Okay.
I think once we get that information, we would be able to bring back to you the information and be able to show, here's what the results were, and you can make the decision at that point as how you'd want to proceed. And I believe the employees and the department heads and elected officials would also be able to show that we tried to incentivize our employees with another type of program, and maybe that wasn't the best program at this time, and we look for other avenues.
But we won't know that till the end of June.
Right.
Right.
Or even after that.
Well,
if
if it is something they like and is good, we won't be able to carry it on for the next year because we didn't allot for it.
Right, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking that it
But if
be
we-
set into the budget. And then if it, like I said, if it turns out that it's unpopular, then we just don't expend it. It
But
just
my
stays in
question
the
is, we
reserves.
want to cut the budget, and yet we want to add 77,000. So how are you going to do that?
Nobody's talking
Take it out
about
of the
cutting the
reserves.
budget.
Well, we want to cut that .33 reserve and then add that 77,000.
It would just become part of it. It just becomes part of the bottom line.
I'm just waiting.
I
Just waiting
have
till
a
it's,
question.
you have a question? Yes, Supervisor.
Just to understand it better, Felicia, so that 77 would be implemented after the end of June?
This 77,000 will be implemented next June of 2021.
2021.
Right.
But if the money's not there, then we just won't
So right
implement.
now, we have the dollars for this June that will carry us. That would just impact.
It was part of the budget.
And so I believe from what I'm hearing is that the option is to be able to put that in there, but then to identify what other means or sources. If there's funds available as that would be identified, if there was excess available, you would be able to make that decision at the time. If there isn't, then that's something that the employees would be made aware of. We would start now communicating that information to them so that they're fully aware and it's transparent to what would be available or what would not. And I think that's the whole part of the process that we're trying to identify today, is we want to have a balanced budget. We want to be able to ensure that it's not going to be on the backs of the employees, but we also don't want to create a situation for us as a county that that particular amount is not going to be beneficial to the actual budget itself and what we're trying to do.
All right.
Yeah, because that money wouldn't be expended for
Since
a
we,
year.
since we seem to be able to tap into the general fund at will, could you actually calculate what it would take if we had that first half step, a salary adjustment beginning July the 1st?
It's 463,000.
That's only if it goes up to December, isn't it?
No.
Mr. Sherman, we're showing the total impact for the entire year.
Oh, so for the entire year?
Correct.
So it would be retroactive too? Is that what you're saying?
The retroactive.
No, well, no, yes.
The anniversary.
Okay, that's what I thought initially, that the first scale, the half step was going to happen July the 1st, and that the anniversary performance half step was going to be delayed until the end of the year, December 31st. That's what I thought, but I was told that wasn't the case, that the whole thing was going to be postponed. So I'm asking you, what would it cost to set the salary half step beginning the 1st of
July 1st.
July? And you're telling me that it would cost the same? It's just a matter.
231,000.
If we, Mr. Chairman, members of the board,
I
the
can't see it.
anniversary performance half step, the total impact half step, $463,000, 714. If we implement this January 1st, then the actual impact is going to be 231,000 only.
Okay, so you're talking about the anniversary one, or are you talking also about the half-step salary?
Oh, he's talking about the scale.
Scales. So you're
Because
talking,
the
okay,
anniversary,
that's,
it'll
and that was the
be
question, right?
retroactive.
The question is that 463,714 what it would cost us if it went into effect the 1st of July?
Yes.
If we waited another half year and waited until December, that would only cost us 200 and something. Is that
That's
what you're
correct,
saying?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
All right, got it. That's all I wanted to know, because I think I was a
See, the
little thrown
anniversary,
back.
it would be retroactive. That's why we have to do it in
Yeah,
December.
that's what I saw there in the bottom, but I didn't see that. I don't think we have that in there. It's only in that particular sheet, right?
Correct.
It's not on our presentation, because I was trying to locate that number before to argue with Susan, but I couldn't find it because it was just on your presentation. It's not on ours.
It's not on
Right.
ours.
Man. Very sneaky of you, very sneaky.
Going on.
Anyway, so,
We go through the rest of the
Oh, well,
expenditures.
Well, let's
No,
make
no.
a decision while we're here. I mean, I'm asking the board to
Decision.
agree to add in the 77,000 in case it's turned out.
I think you want
positive.
to, you
leave
want
it as
to
an
see the
option to
bottom line.
decide at the end, okay? Add that as one option, okay? So we, at the end, we'll talk about the reduction of taxes, the payment of salaries, the additional 70-some thousand dollars for the incentive exceptional policy. We'll leave that till the end so we can decide on it.
Exactly. So I've got listed, number one,
pretty good
go
for
to a
you.
20.00% fund balance and reduce the rate by the same amount to get to that 20.000 and nothing above 20%. It's a fund balance.
Right.
Give the rest back in the tax rate. Number two, give a pay increase starting July 1 and cut something else elsewhere. Number three, add the exceptional policy of 77,057 and in the budget so that if the funds are there, a decision can be made later to implement it. That's what we've got so far.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Do you want to
What
go
else?
through?
Continue, finish it.
One more item, and before I leave the personnel category. Back in February, the Board of Supervisors asked us to look into the PTO buybacks. It's not being recommended. Total amount that it was calculated, $216,042, just for reference only.
I want to see it. I want to have it.
It's not there.
You know,
You're
throw
worse.
something at you.
It's not there, dude. I know that Hill, keeps that information to the right to himself,
If
but
that
I mean, that's
77
okay,
is not
man.
there, I want the
Don't even
PTO.
mention it, Hill. If it's not there, don't mention it.
Supplies and services is the next category, and once
Put 'em
again, we're able to, by almost very minimum, reduce our baseline supplies and services. The recommended budget calls for a one-time and recurrent request to the amount, the one-time $270,000 and recurrent $218,000. We have listed here the increase in access, Altex, 967,465. This is the worst-case scenario.
Yeah. Hopefully the legislature doesn't go back into session.
Yes, when they
Well,
finished the
you're
legislation, the total amount was only 504,100. But we want to budget for the worst just in case. Liability insurance premiums, pretty much flat, not much of an increase. This is the total cost for the life cycle management, which is the replacement of computers for the general fund only, 188,617. Fleet management, we need to address some beginning fund balanced operational deficit. And also there were some requests that we are fulfilling for them. The total amount, 341,861. As you mentioned, we went into a non-department, and we eliminated the items that needed to be eliminated with the drastic reductions to the total savings would be, or the total reduction to that department, $821,000. And this $130,000 that I'm including here is for the solar project that was approved a couple of board meetings back for Solon, the solar project pretty much. It's not the entire savings that they told us for the entire year. This is just half of the year. Conversations with the vendor, there's a possibility that all the projects will be up and running around January. So it's half of the actual
estimated savings.
Savings, correct. Thank you. Capital outlay, we have capital outlay, some projects or some items that we're going to buy for some departments, parks, changes, night vision goggles to the amount of $227,000. Facilities management, these are projects that used to be transferred out to the CAP fund. Now we're just going to leave it in the facilities management revolving fund, so they have a little more flexibility in the projects that they need to do. All the projects anyway, they don't meet the criteria to be considered CIP. Total vehicles are being recommended 985,869. This is another item that has been identified to be delayed until January.
Yeah.
And the fund's going to be deposited in non-department department. Our
the
fleet
next item.
management, the last installment, $500,000, 1.5, which we know is going to take place next fiscal year. So we're going to delay that one.
Oh, okay.
Debt service leases that we have for the equipment across the street. This is the new Solon lease payment that we're going to do for the equipment, $261,000. Like I said, I'm offsetting that with the savings that we're supposed to have. Our maintenance of effort for the jail district, they had an increase that they're going to need. $7,605,000 is the total amount, and statute pretty much sets the amount that we need to send to the jail district. Health department is always the same amount since they were created, $786,000. Our debt service payment for the two issuances that we had in 18 and 19. The one project that we're going to be recommending for ITS, this is a transfer to the CAP fund in the amount of $450,000. Like I referenced to it earlier, the $160,000 guarantee savings from the sheriff is going to go to the boat patrol, and $192,000 worth of grant matching to other departments that we need to do. Every year we have an amount like that. This is the number that I want to draw your attention to. That's the difference between our revenues and our expenditures. That's our structural imbalance, where we're saying this year we're going to be digging into our reserves in the amount of $5,697,825. Also, this number that we show here is the total amount that we are planning on delaying until January 2021, $3.5 million. The majority of the money, of course, is coming from the fleet management and the vehicles that we're not gonna purchase until January. That leaves us with a fund balance. We were able to accomplish all that within the required policy 20% and a little more. Right now in fund balance, we have three categories. the $500,000 board contingency, the required policy 15% emergency purposes, stabilization 5% of total uses. In order for us to implement this recommended budget, one of these three categories is going to be reduced by 58,960. Cumulative, all the items total 19,480,751, which equates to a 20.46% fund balance. Very
You
close
have the
to the fund balance.
0.46% to use for, like the tax. But
That's where I was looking for the reduction,
The 0.46.
0.46.
Okay, okay.
Well, that 58,900 should probably come out of Board of Supervisors contingency.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't think it should come out
We've
of
been
the
as low
others.
as 250.
Yeah, no,
In prior
and you can
years.
take another 40 out of that and just give it back to the, property tax.
You getting there?
Yeah.
That way we'll have a minor increase, but we'll have, a decrease.
So this is the scenario that we had created a spreadsheet to account for those 0.46% in fund balance. 20% of our total uses, which is 95,198,505, equals to 19,039,774. This 772. The difference between the actual 20% and what we have recommended is $440,000.
So that's what we want to figure out a way to get back to the.
Right now, our rate is 2.5288. If we were to adjust that amount, the total reduction would be 3.55 cents.
Well, it's
The
a reduction.
Tax rate will go from 252.88 to 249.33.
A lot of money.
I have no problem with that.
It basically eliminates your board contingency.
It doesn't.
We will, in order for us to make this budget to balanced, we're going to need pretty much the entire board contingency.
Well, why don't we take from the reserve for the fleet management? Take that $500,000 we're going to put there and put it there. I don't think we need to have $1.5 million right now on reserve.
Yeah, but
You
don't
put
forget,
$500,000.
There's two important pieces here, well, more than two. You have the unknown of whether the legislature is going to go back into service. That's $500,000 almost right there, right?
Right.
And then what was the other one? There was another 400,000. What was the other one that you budgeted the whole amount, but we're probably only going to use half of it?
Oh, the scale adjustment.
Sale, the salaries?
The scale adjustment, if you do it on January 1st.
There was something else that we were unsure, other than the
State
Altex.
I
Was
know.
Altex the only one?
Yeah.
But yes.
If you have $3-some million that you think we may be able to delay, why are we having such a big discussion about, $500,000 being short? We can delay them right now.
Mr. Sherman, all this is predicated, again, with those revenues that,
I
like
know.
you said, the uncertainty
It's
is so
fine,
high,
it's
we don't
fine,
know
but
what's going to happen.
But you show us being short $500,000. And what I'm saying is, why do we not simply, for example, I could say this year, look, we're not going to put this $500,000 there this year. We'll have to wait another year. Just put them down, move them from that place to another place. And we just say, why don't you just simply right out the bat say, we're not going to put $500,000 in the reserve for the fleet management group this year, and move those $500,000 where we need it.
Well, if you decide this today,
No,
then
we're not.
okay. Well, you've got an entire number of departments that are going to come to you and potentially say they need something that is not included in the recommended budget. So I think you want to keep your options open before making this kind of decision to reduce by that amount of money.
Oh,
If
but
there
that's,
are other needs.
but that's
in-
where we're at right now. See, that's what we're discussing right now. Priorities. That's what we're discussing. I mean, we wouldn't be discussing this if it wasn't because now we're looking for a way to reduce the property tax rate. And I'm looking for a way to make the payment to the employees the first half step now. So we're just looking for ways to get the funds to do that. At least I am.
I am too.
You know, so that's all I'm saying. I'm saying, look, there are some things in there that are important to me. Employees are important to me more than a reserve and the fleet management, for example. Tax reduction is more important to Supervisor McLeod than some other things, and he's got to pick. That's what he's trying to do, trying to find the money to balance this budget from within that amount that you set aside. I'm saying, you know, some of these decisions are
Be
easier than
able to
others.
lower the tax rate.
Yeah, and be able to lower the tax rate.
Gil, tell me the number again at the end of your spreadsheet here by going down to 20%.
That one.
2.4933.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but okay, so that amounts to what, 456,000?
456,414.
That's what that .46 was?
Yes.
Okay.
So is what you're saying, you're taking $500,000 from the reserve. Is that what you're
Right.
basically saying then?
Yeah.
So it's going to go below 20%?
No, it's going to go to 20%.
Taking the BOS.
Oh, so we don't need to come up with funds
No,
from
we
someplace
don't.
else?
No.
If all your revenues come in and all your expenditures stay where they are.
And it's not gonna be 20% by the time we finish, I can almost assure you that. No, it's not, it doesn't take a brain surgeon or Dr. Fauci or whatever to figure this out. I mean, this is not gonna come back right away. It's going to be a slow process to come back. So whatever we're doing here is calculating just damage. We don't really have a true way to calculate how long it's gonna take this economy to come back to even a shade of what it used to be. It may, but that's being optimistic. Normally we do budgets in a conservative way, which
Yeah.
means to us that we're not thinking everything's gonna work out fine. So, but we still have a pretty good, decent reserve to be able to do the things that you guys wanna do. We can do them without, and be careful as we go along and see that, so we can adjust it accordingly. I think a property tax rate reduction is important to you guys. I like to see the employees get at least that first, you know, 0.5% at the beginning, and then wait for the other half at December, January, when we have a better sense of what the economy
Whether
is
the
like.
economy is
I think we
going.
can do that within this budget and still have a very
And still have a
conservative.
2.4933 budget, tax rate.
Anything?
We do want to go over the jail district just because it is a concern and it's
I know
so.
Can we use the flood district for the jail district?
Yes, you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
As long as the,
Yeah, flood never happens in Yuma until it happens, right? Like the health department, we don't have a pandemic until we have one.
Mr. Chairman, this is the general fund. It's a balanced budget and within the reserves required by policy, 20% policy. We did the same recommended budget, the same exercise for the districts. Need to adjust it all the time. Same scenario that we have for the jail district, our current budget, our new projected amount, and of course, our recommended budget for 2021. Our adjusted beginning fund balance is $1,285,000, which amounts around 6% of their total uses. Same criteria that we did for the general fund. We're expecting the recovery to be around 4.5% sales taxes. Federal grants, the correctional housing, all these numbers are coming from the jail district based on future plans that they have. The maintenance of effort that I just explained, $7.6 million. They will have a total sources of $21,156,000. Again, flat, pretty much the same amount as our current budget. Personnel baseline. Some positions stayed open, so we were able to budget them lower. We have a market adjustment that we needed to address, reclassification, and we're doing exactly the same thing with the scale and the anniversary, which is budgeting half step, 1%, but recommending the scale adjustment to be delayed until January 2021. 2% for the jail district would mean $298,000 instead of 149 that we have listed here. In order for us to work and have the contingency that we want, or some sort of contingency, last year what we did, we implemented a kind of a guarantee savings from the jail district. They will guarantee the savings on personnel, so that way that money will stay in fund balance. We need to significantly increase those savings to $1.3 million from 297. It's quite a number here. 1.3 is what they have been averaging the last 2 years, a little bit less. But this is the number that I share with the jail district, and those are the numbers that they have. Supplies and services, pretty much flat with our current budget. There are some vehicles that we are recommending if the money is available. Transfers out for their debt service. If we were to stay at 5%, that's their policy, 5%, it would require $1 million, $90,000. Right now, it's only $639,968. We're going down to 2.94% reserves of the total uses. Conversations that I had with the jail.
You say you're going down, but you're actually going a little up from what they have now? 2.91 to 2.94?
When we adopted the budget in 1920, there were some last minute adjustments that we had to do. So we actually went down to 2.91. Conversations with the jail district, they are willing to, if they don't want, not do the vehicles, or $20,000. Total amount that we're going to delay for them, $331,000. But this is a concern for us, the jail district. Their fund balance is way low, below the contingency level.
That 331 is not included in these numbers though, right? That's just something you'd like us to look at?
Oh, it is included.
It is included.
It's the
It just
delay,
can be
it's the
delayed.
it's the sequestered funds. But it's
But the
included in the
total
budget.
amount is in this budget, right?
Yes, everything is
And
in
you
the
can
budget.
save 331,000 by sequester,
Delaying, yes.
delay.
Delay.
You know what, I'm not in favor of that for the sheriff's department. I mean, that is a department that does suffer turnover.
You're talking about the jail district? Not the sheriff. The sheriff department is going to be a much bigger budget. This is just the jail district, isn't it?
It's the jail district, yes.
Oh, the sheriff department is
Oh,
going to.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
what's coming tomorrow?
Okay.
The library district, once again, we're recommending the same combined rate, 0.9137. The only adjustment that we're doing is whatever reduction in tax rate for the debt service is now being transferred for the operation. Same allowance for uncollectibles, 3.5%. Personnel expenditures, market adjustment under fills, same scenarios like we're doing with the general fund. Their fund balance here is expected to be 34%, 34.80%, 4,163,921. Usually with the jail district, we like to keep them in 30 to 30, library district 30 to 35%, because they have to wait until all the property taxes come in. And usually there is a delay at the beginning of the fiscal year. So for the first months of operations, all they're doing, they're working off of their reserves. So at 30% is the recommendation that we had all the time. Policy calls for 25%. Health department. Oh, wow.
Pretty good.
Can we see it now? One of these days I'll get it.
What happened? There we go.
But just for different screens. Health department, county sales taxes, the same percentage of increase, 4.5%.
Sales taxes?
Mm-hmm.
They have a 0.11%. Personnel, supplies and services, pretty much flat with the current budget. Fund balance, they're going to see an increase as well of $2.4 million. Their total contingency reserve, 59.22%.
That's actually going down a little bit.
It is going down. We're recommending to use $1.4 million of their budget. And we have flood control.
Your favorite subject, Supervisor?
Flood control.
Flood control.
Flood control, again, property taxes, same tax rate like we had recommended for the library and the general fund. Same allowance for uncollectibles, 3.5. Scale adjustment and anniversary, they don't have any market or compensation issues that we need to address. Estimated to be spent in 2021 is $15.5 million, $15.6 million. It's a vehicle that was recommended. Their fund balance is estimated or is recommended to be 27.29%. Those are all the districts and the general fund.
Okay.
It is quite concerning, the jail district, but we can transfer, I mean, if things don't look good, we can always transfer money late in the year, right?
Transfer.
Yes, we just reviewed the statute that, or the state budget session law that passed, identifying that for counties such as us, with our population range, we can authorize, the board can authorize up to $1.25 million to be transferred from one county-wide district to another county-wide district. So flood control is a county-wide district, and so is the jail district. So that could occur if you wanted to do either a rate. You would need to do a rate adjustment now on the flood control, or you just move cash from their fund balance into the operating fund of the jail district. And you have to notify the state by October 1st. So there's time to make a decision up until that time about what you want to do and how much you want to do.
Can we notify and not move the money,
I suppose so.
right?
Mhm.
So
No
essentially-
requirement once you notify them, you have to
Yeah.
do
you
it.
can
So
notify-
essentially, you could have one of these other funds be their reserve should it be needed, right? That's what I'm getting at. I would recommend that we do make that notification in October and,
Before October, go ahead.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, September, whatever.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
Just don't let the jail district find out.
Yeah, they're gonna try and operate with what they have, if they, yeah.
Well, they've always done a good job,
They've done a great job.
Yeah, they
you know,
have.
working with what they've got and stuff, so.
That budget also supposes another $400,000 in savings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over this year? I'm sorry, the jail district?
The jail district?
Yeah. That was a huge number of savings.
Right there, 400.
No, well, actually, that was the set-aside, the sequester money, but you're talking about, no?
Yeah, that's another huge jump. I mean, they did a great job at almost $1 million this year. We're asking another 400,000 out of them. That's a pretty big number.
Hopefully, they won't have any problems with this coronavirus thing. Throw them off.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Jail district does a great job with the personnel savings, but at the same time, because they also have a lot of needs operational wise, what they use
Yeah, more
most of the
for the
time when
health
they have
district.
savings, they utilize that in their supplies and services or in their capital.
Yeah.
They're pretty good about managing their cash.
Medical's what's their killer.
That's what happens to us with the state.
Medical expenditures.
Medical
What kills
examiner
them.
also goes up significantly.
This is true.
That's the big unknown.
It's just that they have that.
Okay, share.
Oh, well, we're talking about whether the health district would be a better way to get some funds to put into the jail district because of the large reserve. You know, it's like 60% or something like that.
Or
So we were
34.
talking about that briefly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it says, and Supervisor McLeod said, well,
On a
that would be
pers-
like punishing them for doing a good job and getting all these grants. And I'm saying, well, that's what the state does to us.
So they actually offset, some of their funding offsets the grant deficits
You too close.
because of cash flow. And even though the percentage is higher for the health district, the dollar number is smaller. The flood control number is huge. Even though the percentage looks small, it's
Yeah, we get it.
millions and millions more than the millions in the health district.
Just don't want to
fund
make,
balance.
you know, either one of those is really difficult to justify because flood control, it's okay because it doesn't flood that much. The health district was okay because nothing happened that big. But now, you know, now you get to see why having, you know, reserve.
Yeah. Why
We
we
were
need 'em.
fortunate that the state and the federal government stepped in and sent us another grant to cover some of this cost. But essentially, the health department is one of those situations where if there is an emergency that we have to cover ourselves, it will be a big one. Normally, it takes tracing, testing and tracing. Tracing just is going to be a major expense that we're going to have to contract. I mean, I honestly believe that this testing, this rapid testing, what's it called, the Blitz, is going to bring out the fact that there's a lot of people in Yuma County that have the virus that hadn't been tested before. And now we're going to have big numbers coming up because when you're testing 300 people, you're going to get, 15, 20 of them. And now that's going to be added to the number of people who test positive, which then means tracing for another 15 people, which, I mean, the health department could be in a world of pain really quickly if this continues. Okay, but anyway, I pontificate. Move on.
They may need to use their contingency just to hire some people to do training.
Well, they got a decent grant, like $250,000 grant. They should be able to use that right away. Okay, so what's next?
And also, while we're on that subject, Gil, we're tracking the expenditures anyway, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Supervisor McLeod, yes. Since the day of the declaration, I reached out to the departments for them to trace the COVID-19 related expenditures.
Here comes.
This is a budget issue. This is a budget issue. We're dealing with the budget, general budget. So that means, how about the attorneys? Do we pay them? Just kidding. Let's move on, people. Get back.
Chairman, this.
Nice silent cue.
Yeah, that's right. Dressed in black with,
Give you
some
that
great
1,000-yard
things.
stare, like
Staring at you like, moving up, move on.
Real flag. It's all the numbers that I had. I think there were enough for went out.
Okay, so you read out the indications or recommendations. We'll be coming back tomorrow with some of those numbers.
Yes, number 4, I read the 3 earlier. Number 4 is to notify our use of flexibility language potentially for from flood to
by
jail
October.
or from another district to.
That will be a decision we need to make, which,
By October 1st.
yeah, okay. That's it. People, anything else?
It was 3.5 cents to get, it was 3.5 cents. I just want to make sure I've got the numbers right.
3.4 something, wasn't it?
3.55.
Oh, 3.55.
3.55.
355.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Well, guys,
What's 3.5?
you have something?
That's how many cents
Okay.
the tax rate would go down.
If nothing
Get the
else,
20%
make
reserve.
those adjustments and bring out those recommendations and see what those numbers look like tomorrow. We're gonna come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow and go through the rest of the departments. And at the end, we'll discuss what sticks in the budget and what doesn't, okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That does it for this afternoon. Thank you.